Right. Yep. I'm going to say it back again. I'm nearly at my 50 Sunday Soundbites. And I'm going to do a special Sunday Soundbite for that 50th. Okay, so look out for that. Anyway, something that was popularized in the 1920s by advertising executive Fred R. Barnard. Yes, we've all heard the saying, a picture paints. No, sorry, it doesn't. Actually, that's the song, isn't it? A picture is worth 1,000 words. And I'm not going to sing this song, don't worry. Meaning that a single complex idea, okay, emotion or story can be communicated by or with a still image more effectively and instantly than through a verbal description. It highlights the unique, rapid impact of visual storytelling. As change managers, we actually sometimes forget this, don't we? When a change is announced, as an example, our instinct is usually to write. Let's get it out there. Let's get some comms out there. We produce emails, FAQs, newsletters, presentations, intranet articles, and lengthy documents explaining every single detail of the change. We also assume if we provide enough information, people will understand. Yet, the problem is, many employees still walk away asking, so what exactly does this mean for me? I don't understand. The problem isn't always the message. Sometimes it's the medium that it's sent through. You know, our brains are naturally wired to recognize patterns, shapes, and relationships. We process visual information far more quickly than text, and we're much more likely to remember something we've actually seen than something we've simply read. That's why we instinctively understand a map, recognize a familiar face in a crowd, or grasp the meaning of a traffic sign without stopping to actually analyze it. The same principle applies during organizational change. A simple process map can explain a new workflow in seconds. A before and after diagram can instantly demonstrate what exactly is changing. A timeline can reduce uncertainty by showing what happens next. A stakeholder map can illustrate relationships that would take paragraphs to describe. Even a simple icon or color-coded graphic can help people navigate complex information with greater confidence. Visuals don't just make communication look more appealing, they make it easier to understand. But more importantly, they reduce cognitive load. During change, people are already coping with unnecessary increased workloads, competing priorities, and the emotional impact of leaving familiar ways of working behind. Their capacity to absorb information is often at a very low ebb. Asking them to read another 10-page document or 80-page slide deck may satisfy our need to communicate, but it doesn't necessarily satisfy their need, which is specifically to understand. Helping people see the change is often far more effective than simply asking them to read about it. Of course, visuals are not a substitute for good communication. I never said they were. A poorly designed diagram can be just as confusing as a poorly written email. Graphics should never exist simply because they look kind of nice. Yeah? Every visual should have a specific purpose, which is to simplify complexity, reinforce a key message, or help people make sense of the journey ahead. The most effective communication combines strengths of both words and visuals. Words provide, obviously, the context, and pictures create the clarity that's needed. Together, they build an understanding. So the next time you're preparing a communication for a change initiative, take a step back, pause, okay, before you start writing another paragraph, and ask yourself one simple question. Could I explain this more effectively with a picture? You may discover that the most memorable part of your communication isn't the carefully crafted text that you've spent ages on perfecting. It's just a simple diagram or illustration or infographic that helps someone finally say, "Hey, now I understand." Perhaps that's why the old saying has stood the test of time. A picture really is worth 1,000 words, especially when you're trying to explain change. The one thing I will say here at the end is about the graphics that a lot of people use, the one pages currently created by AI. They are abysmal. You cannot take all that information in one go. So I share info decks, which are kind of a bit sparse for each page with information, but then that gives people time to assimilate what's actually in them and actually understand what I'm trying to convey. So less is actually more. Think about it, okay? Cheers!